we're we're almost half of the class because I believe that if half is available, half can teach the other half. So we should just wait for maybe another 5 minutes so we can begin. Okay, I think we could just start. We have lesser hours, I mean minutes, to engage on this particular lecture. I've been able to share with the course rep um, the the material. I believe he's going to share it to you guys. If not, if he hasn't even shared it already. But I believe at the end of my class, you'll be able to get the material. What I'll just do is to try to run through the remaining material so you can study it yourself, pending when my other half comes in to take the remaining of the course. So can I see a notification? Can we all hear me? Can you all hear me? Indicate on the chat box or you can speak out. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay, yes, I can see. Yes. Thank you so much. So I'll just go ahead to share my screen and let's just begin so we can round up this particular session of mine. This, the course rep is not around yet. Okay. Okay. So I believe we just finished touching on global value chain and the environmental responsibility, looking at actors and responsibility for most global producers and manufacturers. So right now we go into the environmental challenges in global value chain era. we see that we have population transfer. I mean, that's pollution transfer rather. So firms relocate polluting activities to developing countries. As we mentioned earlier in the morning, we said Africa becomes a dumping ground for most of the innovations that the developed countries have moved past. And part of it is our automobile vehicles, where we see that the world is moving into green and EVs, but Nigeria is still consuming that of petroleum vehicles, and we are buying as high as 20 million, 30 million, even to the extent of even 150 million. But the world is actually moving away from that. The world is moving to sustainable energy uh, for. So I think we need to do better as a country, and also to see how we can advocate for right technology to be, we should have like industries located in our countries where they can take our materials and transform it into a well-refined, purposeful environmental sustainability technology. So we see an example here where they're saying textile dry industries in part of Asia and Africa contaminating water bodies. We can see this especially in eyes and skin. In Kano State, an example is Kano State, where we see the removal of, what's it called, the animal skin and then turning into leather. We can even part of Zaria, Sokoto, we identify with that because they need water to actually remove those substances. Then we have carbon footprints of logistics. So long distance shipping increases greenhouse gas emission. Aviation and maritime transport contribute significantly to global emission. Because of international trade, movement of cargo ships actually emits carbon monoxide or the carbon gases, which in the end lead to more greenhouse effects, where we have more traps of gaseous release that lead to global warming. And that's why we are still identifying with what's it called? We are still identifying with the world having so much high temperature and the ozone layer being depleted. So we have resource extraction impact. Mining for combat, DRC, Congo. We know what is happening in Congo, where rebel groups come together and chance um, communities and also go away with many of these materials. Lithium cases, land degradation, and water stress. We understand when we try to extract, we definitely create stress because now we dig down deep and then we affect the underground water body, and in some instances, the surface water body as well. Then we have waste externalization. So electronic and plastic waste exported to developing countries for disposal and informal recycling. So now what we have is that when our TVs were still having hunchbacks, you see that in the late 90s and early 20s, we have the majority of them in our households, or our radios that have speakers that actually still look like today, most of them are faded away, and we have them in our dump sites. The decomposition rate is actually very low. So now we are looking at governance mechanism for environmental responsibility. So you need to take responsibility. And that's basically have to be by global regulation, by mostly United Nations environmental programs, the United Nations uh, affiliates. And we have this environmental, social, and governance. This is the new paradigm in environmental sustainability, where we include environment, the social well-being and governance, as the policy, the regulations that we bring out. So we need to synergize between or within the three parameters that deals with the environment, the quality of environment we live, the social, how does it affect our social well-being, and how do our policy help us mitigate or control any form of hazardous happenings. As we can see, SO zero, SO ISO 14001 Environmental Management System refers to the help organization identify with in terms of identify environmental impact, reduce pollution, comply with laws, and improve environmental performance continuously. This particular environmental management system law is being used to regulate environmental management practices. And this is domesticated with the United Nations. So we have the carbon footprint reporting. Definitely, countries are encouraged to have carbon footprint, so you can know when to fade out on certain technology, or you can see how you can innovate to make sure that you reduce the emission of carbon to help us, have a stable and habitable world. And basically, part of the carbon footprint is the afforestation and replanting trees in our urban communities, having a walk pathway where it's very conducive for relaxation and all that. In Abuja, before we have gardens demarcated for you using it as grains. So those grains are meant to serve uh, carbon footprint initiatives that can help us produce more trees, that can help us with good respiratory oxygen being produced by those trees. And just to mention a few, then we have the extended producer responsibility. Yes, you produce your commodity, doesn't need, so it doesn't end that way that you've already you've exported or you've already taken it to the market. You are responsible for the waste that your produce actually costs. So you need to show your social economic responsibility in partaking in reducing the amount of havoc or waste that is being generated from your product. So producers are responsible in most cases to look out for how to create alternative green circular innovation that can help sustain the environment. Then we have the sustainable certification, fair trade, rainforest alliance. So basically, this is what we have in most East African countries, where you have most of their reserve being guarded. That's because you cannot just go to the reserve to hunt or cut down trees because it has repercussion through their own regulation and they enforce it efficiently. But in Nigeria, sometimes you just see that most of our animals are going extinct because of we don't have these laws or we don't operate it enough. I know there might be an existing law, but implementation becomes a problem. Then African cases studies on uncontrolled GVC. So combat mining in DRC Congo, we've already identified that. We said it's critical for electric vehicles, but linked to environmental degradation. Yes, most of this extraction leads to a lot of environmental degradation, and which we need to discourage. We have the cocoa value chain that is mostly, before it was West Africa, Nigeria, but now we can see almost all our plantations are gone. We didn't have an alternative plan or for us to have regrown other ones because it's usually like one of our highest earners in the early 60s and 70s. And now we can't really boast for the, we having so much from that. So we have Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, that's Ivory Coast, having most of their cultivation towards this cocoa. However, the practice actually allows for deforestation concern and sustainable sourcing initiative. So what they usually do is basically see how they can advocate for afforestation in as much that you are using a particular uh, space or vegetal area, you need to plant another one where it will naturally, permeate towards the ecology balance around that space. Then we have oil value chain in Nigeria, environmental damage from extraction affecting communities. That is well received by most of us because we are not, since when majority of us were born, we understand that the Niger Delta has been suffering a lot of environmental damage that leads to a lot of mutations, river blindness, skin diseases, even to cancerous infections and all that. And these have affected communities around the coastal region of Nigeria. And moving forward to strategy for sustainable GVCs, we have the circular economic approach. In any innovations, solutions that most of our innovators are coming out with, we believe that the world is looking at how sustainable, how circular can that particular innovation look like. Like you can have an initiation, but do you have the innovation for sustainability of that particular innovation? How do you want that innovation to be circular in nature? That means that what you put out as waste is being carried as another resource for another production. So for you to have a continuous use of extraction materials, then we have the one of local value addition to reduce transportation or transport emission. So now, because of location of industries, we believe that hubs should have local ways to transport their materials, and materials should be used around places where they are needed. So it reduces the emission from transportation. Then cleaner energy in manufacturing. Yes, that's what we're saying. How do we now use green energy for manufacturing? How do we use the wind energy, the solar energy, the geothermal energy to do production? So we have the supply chain transparency and traceability. So in as much as you're supplying, you are actually meant to be able to track or trace ways and means of which your supply is actually being delivered to your consumer. So green trade policy and environmental clauses, then definitely when agreements are meant to be signed, there must be the clause of green trade policy. This will help us to maintain environmental balance and protect the environment as well, and which implies that we are practicing environmental sustainability. And we have other key theoretical perspective of majority of these theories that moves with environmental sustainability and um, the value chain or global value chain theories. We have the global production network theory, we have the ecological economics, we have the sustainable supply chain management, and we have the corporate environmental responsibility. So corporations are meant to be responsible. They have to take value and they have to take the hits when necessary, and when it affects the environment, they are ready to do the needful by making sure they clean up the environment and make it habitable for all. Then what we have here, we have potential regional value chain in Africa. We can see the different regional value chain that we have. Like in Central Africa, we can see what is available, with majority available. They have wood, copper, they have coltan. So these are resources that can be identified in a very commercial amount. Then Eastern Africa, coffee, tourism, floriculture. That's flowers and all that. Eastern Africa do a lot better there. Then we have date palm in Northern Africa because of the environmental condition. What does better or that has adapted to the kind of terrain is that of date palm, and which most of us are Muslims are using for the breaking of our fasts. And it has a very good amount of nutrients. Almost all forms of nutrients can be seen from the date palm. Then we have energy because of the sun, direct radiation on the cross. You can actually just put your panels and you can generate a lot of, alternative energy. Then we have the prospects also. Then West Africa, we see that most of our value chain moves around construction. I think the region is undergoing a lot of transformation in terms of infrastructure development, urbanization, and just to mention a few. Because of our population size, poultry also sees like a significant raise in terms of the value chain. And we started domesticating more. That means that more chickens are being B&S in terms of production. Then we have the cashew nuts. Yes, very rich. West Africa is very rich in cashew plantation. And I don't think we are even doing a lot in terms of harnessing the nuts from the cashew byproduct. So once we can do that, when we have a processing factory or plants, it's easier for us to have the greatest potential, and it has a lot of nutrients. Then in Southern Africa, we have textile, edible salts because of the ocean that is around there. Then agriculture that deals with marine life domestication. So we are moving to 6.0 that talks about industrial growth versus environmental limit. Environment has its limit, it has its breaking points. So for us to want to grow our industries, we need to just oppose it with the limits the environment can take. And if you can look at this definition, industry growth versus environmental limits. It's basically the tension between the expansion of manufacturing activities and the planet capacity to sustain ecosystem, resources, and human. So in as much that we want to advance or we want to have quality of life, we need to understand that the environment has its limits. It has its capacity limitation. So in as much that we want so much to be done on a particular area or a geographical zone, we need to understand that the carrying capacity, the ability for it to withstand those form of pressure or transformation needs to be studied for it not to be degraded, because land degradation is part of the effect of environmental limits. Then we have this conceptual overview. Industrial growth, expansion of manufacturing, mining, infrastructure, and energy production to drive economic development. Employment and technological advancement. That's the concept of industrial growth. Basically, expansion of manufacturing, mining, infrastructure, and energy production. So we are looking at all sectors of resources extraction, from even conversion from manufacturing to mining, extraction, to infrastructure, where we want to transform what our earth or surface looks like, to energy production. What form of energy? Is it the coal production, even the solar production? How do you, marry multiple function within an environmental space? Then we have the environmental limits that deals with the environmental limits deals with natural boundaries within which ecosystem can generate resources, absorb pollution, and maintain biodiversity and climate stability. So environmental limits deals with natural boundaries within which ecosystem can regenerate. So if we actually affect the environment more than the way it can generate, that means that environment is overbearing its maximum capacity. So basically what we need to do is to manage the effect of environmental transformation. And this basically now looks at how can the environment absorb the pollutants that comes out from the human activity, and also how does it affect the biodiversity? Most times because of the urbaniness of most emerging countries, we tend to just cut down trees, chase away faunas or floras, and also we affect the biomass or the biosphere in terms of the balance. So animals that are located within a space either go extinct or are migrated away from that particular space, affecting the balance of that ecosystem. And we have this climate instability or stability, basically, where the meteorological condition or weather condition can be affected by the activities of industries around those neighborhoods. So what you have now, you have acidic rainfalls, you see capillary actions or leaching of the soil, where you see that there's so much exposure of the vegetal cover, where the land is bare, and you can see that that land cannot yield any form of fruit when it comes to cultivation. So now what we have, the challenges. How do we pursue economic growth without existing ecological career capacity? So driving of industrial growth. How do we drive industrial growth? Population increase and urbanization actually drive industrial growth. Globalization and demand for raw material definitely wants you to want to extract more. So it drives industrial growth. We have government industrialization policies. We have technological advancements. What 200 men will do, one particular machine can just do it within seconds or within minutes or within hours. And it could take us like 3 months to 1 year to attain or to achieve that same amount of productivity when technology has already advanced. And basically, part of the African problem is because we are not moving with the age of technology. Most of the technology that we use are other technology that's already been overcome in developed countries, and Africa now pick on this technology and becomes our own best new thing. So we need to see how we can be innovators rather than consumers. Innovating in terms of Africa should be enough to cater for its advancements. And that is when Africa comes together to see how they can regenerate and also do research and development in improving environmental sustainable initiatives and solutions, because the world is moving forward, it's not in the past. So for us to compete with the world, we need to learn how to advance with time. We should be on the same table discussing the same issues and providing solutions for the same problem. This is what can help Africa not to come and consume something that is already becoming obsolete in other developed climes. So we have this foreign direct investments and export-led growth. Definitely, because of the international trade that is happening in line with the global value chain, foreign direct investments is coming in, and we have export-led growth. So now, instead of us just doing being a deposit and being where you dump your waste, we definitely need to look inward and see how we can produce enough so we too can send out for them to deal with as well. So there should be a balance of trade that comes with sustainability. And an example of African environmental limit and industrial growth is the rapid cement and steel production growth in Nigeria and Ethiopia to support infrastructure expansion. If we can notice, or if we can see, the new works minister is so adamant on using the cement or the limestone technology for our road construction, of which this allow us to source material locally, and is more, I believe, more affordable and durable as well. So looking at the strength analysis, it feels like it's going to outlive the quota or bitumen infrastructure, that's roads that we have before, because of the heavy duty trucks that move around the road track and all that. So we have the environmental limit and pressure. Environmental limit and pressure includes resource depletion, overmining of material, deforestation, and water extraction. So we understand that when we continue to go to a place to fetch water, or we go to a particular mining site to say we want to search for mineral, we exhaust those resources. And what you have is that after the resources has been exhausted and the land has been degraded, you see people moving to another site to say they want to exploit it as well. And what we have, the environmental limit is already, compromised, because at the end of the day, there's no sustainable plan, towards that, and that's a very big problem. We have pollution as well, air emission from factories, oil spills, industrial waste. Part of the reason, that's the other side of advancement in terms of manufacturing. There's a lot you have to deal with. You have to have a coping mechanism or coping capacity to actually withstand all these pollutants that comes with manufacturing or technological advancement or industrialization. And we have the climate change. I've identified climate change as one of the reasons why the earth is no longer as peaceful and as accommodating as it used to. People coming out with a lot of cancerous diseases, life expectancy rate going down as low as 55 in Africa, and Europe at 65, Asia at 70. Before now, I believe we all know that before the 19th century, people were getting to like 200 years. But now, that life expectancy has gone down. The genetic modify consumption that we are having has affected, in short, the life of a human, not even the environment now, also the human that now live on this earth. So we have the biodiversity loss, habitat destruction from industrial expansion. We all know that when we want to, improve on our infrastructures, on our industries, we need to clear out a space where we can get materials for the industries, or space where we can site the industries. And in doing so, we tend to disrupt the ecological balance, which, in return affects the quality of life around our locality. An example from African perspective is oil extraction in the Niger Delta, causing ecosystem degradation and livelihood disruption. We all know that most coastal settlements are actually now being submerged. Most of those settlements is either being consumed by the water, or the water itself cannot be drinkable, or even the aquatic animals cannot be eatable. And these basically constitute to part of the environmental limits that affect humans. Then let's move to conflict between growth and environmental limits. If you can see here, we have industrial expansion that can cause environmental consequences. So mining and quarry leads to land degradation and water pollution. We all know that. Industrial agriculture leads to soil erosion and chemical runoff. That means that industrial agriculture, you just want to make sure that you continue to, to use that particular soil to the highest to, in short, to the maximum capacity. And what you get is that you might lose the nutrient in that soil. And what you get is a barren land that cannot support any form of vegetal cover. Then we have the fossil fuel energy that deals with climate change and air pollution. We've made example of Port Harcourt, River States. We've made example of Sokoto and Kogi for even some of those cements uh, extractions and processing. For fossil fuel, we have the Niger Delta where the rainfall is acidic and also affects the quality of life with people living around that neighborhood or around that region. Then we have the urban industrial zone, waste accumulation and habitat loss. So, definitely when industries are being formed, they have many byproducts and waste materials being generated from those places. In most times, most industrial layers don't even factor in where they can transform waste into wealth or transform waste into resources, or how they can have a byproduct from waste materials generated from their industries. And so what we have is that we have habitats just being polluted by this waste material. You see them moving away from those areas. So the accumulation is massive. And in as much that we want industrialization, we have to factor in the impact it can have on our environment. So now, looking at the pathway to balance, sustainable industrialization, we have to think about cleaner production technologies. How do we innovate on cleaner production? How do we make sure that companies that come to invest in Nigeria or that are trying to extract resources use cleaner production technology to, advance their own profit or capital, as it may seem? The renewable energy transition, there must be a plan. Like most developed countries are planning for moving from combustion to cleaner energy. In short, majority of them are even thinking about decommissioning some of their plants because of it's not giving cleaner energy. It's just like what happens to the coal factories in the early days in the European continent, where most of their coal sites are being abandoned. You see, if you watch National Geography or Discovery Channel, you see mega engineering, where most of those engineers serve their purpose at that time. But now, the new system is that how do you put value added and how do you retain sustainability within these innovations or technology that you want to bring? Then we have environmental regulations and impact assessments. Definitely very, very important. In short, it's the most important part of, setting out environmental balance. If we don't want imbalance or we want to protect our environment, we must make sure that environmental regulations are being enforced and impact assessment are being done to social and the social habitats and also the economic value that it could have on to the even the country that is the host of those innovations. Then we have the green industrial policies and eco-industrial park. As I said, me and my friends are thinking about having eco-industrial park that have integrated residential and eco-friendly innovation that deals with circular economy. Uh, I think Akwa Ibom is thinking about doing such, or they have even flagged it up. I don't know if it has come to reality, but we can see this form of green industrial policy and eco-industrial park in most developed countries of the world. The Middle East, you see them there, you see them even in Asia. Then we have example of such as Morocco renewable energy investments supporting low carbon industrial growth. So now, majority of their regulatory or their policies for new industries in Morocco comes with um, foreigners or investors having energy investments of low carbon industries. So if you want to come and invest in Morocco or Morocco's investment plan, deals with sustainability plan. So now, how do you want to reduce carbon? Because the world is bleeding through mismanagement of our innovations. So key theory perspective, we can browse it, we can check it out. Limits to growth theory, where economic growth constraint, and then we have ecological modelization theory, where technology and policy can make industry environmentally friendly. Then we have sustainable development model, where we fall under, and where we balance economy, environmental, and social needs. So in conclusion, industrial growth is essential for development, especially in emerging countries like ours or economics like ours. But unchecked expansion can exceed environmental limits and undermine long-term sustainability. The goal is green industrialization. So in as much that we are clamoring for industrialization, manufacturing, we must factor in green economy, green production, sustainable development that come with environmental sustainability. So in turn, we need economic progress that respects ecological boundaries. Okay, I think we're almost there, but we don't have time. The material has already been shared. If you can see in this place, in this next page, we have factors, major factors influencing localization, localization of manufacturing activities. So Africa, how do we localize our manufacturing activities? This is what we need to think about. It has to be in our own school of thoughts. We have the objective of industrial localization, that we can minimize production and transport costs, maximize profit and efficiency, access raw materials and markets, secure reliable labor and infrastructure, benefit from government policy and initiatives. So these basic objectives can help us localize our manufacturing activities. And pattern of this manufacturing localization should include urban industrialization zones. We need to have hubs where we can segment different industrial behaviors or materials where we know that we can track or measure. Then we have resource-based industrial region. As I mentioned, you have to site industry close to where there are export-oriented coastal zones, like what we have now, that we are trying to have inland waterways and also expand the Lagos Badagry Expressway to that of Cross River Calabar. That's basically expanding coastal zones. This can help us have more resources or manufacturing goods pulled out from different geopolitical zones and being transported to where they can use to increase our global value chain. So the materials have already been shared because of time. I think my class will come to an end on this. Um, I need one or two persons to speak, so we'll know if we been able to grasp one or two things. So, class, anybody that wants to speak will raise up his or her own hands, so we give you the floor. Is the class rep around? Okay, Ajokos, please, you have the floor. Please, you can go ahead, speak, please. You just have five, let's just use it under 5 minutes so we can wrap up and then close for tomorrow lectures. You raised your hand. Is the are they not allowed to speak? Cost rep, the assistant.
Sorry, I unmuted them.
Okay, please do.
Good afternoon, sir. Thank you so much for the lectures. They have been so impactful, sir. I just want to contribute a little to what you said already. My contribution is coming directly to the pathways for sustainable industrialization in Africa. So I think we need to start enforcing environmental justice in Africa and in Nigeria per se. Looking at Nigeria, for instance, we've not had enough of environmental justice where people do a lot of things that would have taken them to jail, but we play politics in everything that we do. So if we start as a nation, we start as advocate of sustainable environmental management, and then we project environmental justice, I think is also going to help us a lot to curtail some of the excesses and some of the things that are not done right within our sphere here. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So any other contribution? Yes, please, Terry, you have the floor, please.
Environmental
Okay,
justice.
thank you very much, sir, for your comprehensive lecture. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, so my own is question. And my question is that between environmental legislation and awareness campaign and enlightenment, which of the two is more effective in environmental protection? Because we need to have a clearance between these two, because in Nigeria, our laws are not biting. So I feel since environmental resources serve a huge purpose in terms of satisfying needs, and you have bourgeois and capitalists who, whatever awareness campaign that you push or advocacy, would like to push further to carry out their goal and object their profits, because it's all about profit maximization for them. So in a scenario where laws are not biting, where do we find the balance? Thank you, sir.
Oh, okay. Our problems in Africa is peculiar, and we need to be deliberate. Sometimes African leadership don't listen, and the citizens or the advocates or the NGO or CSOs go ahead to initiate what the leadership is meant to do. And basically, I think the most effective way is what we have now, that we are having more people or more practitioners coming to the fore to, hear their voice, to make them understand that, yes, I think it's high time for us to get responsible. It's high time for us to, do the needful. It's high time for us to hold companies accountable for whatever pollutants or degradation that they bring upon the communities where we stay. So I think the most effective way is that of the efforts that practitioners like ourselves or communities, after when they have been aware or they have been engaged and they know their rights, can now use to push for the policies, and the policy will now come into more effort like in terms of delivery, because now our laws are always there, but what is the level of enforcement? Enforcement cannot be done if awareness is not there. So awareness comes first, sensitization comes first before you can enforce. And if both the community, individuals within those communities knowing or having the awareness of what they need to do, and those companies understanding the regulation that's already been set. So there's no cut corners or people trying to bribe other people to keep short or not doing the needful. So I think the first one that comes first is sensitization of advocacy, awareness campaigns, and all that. Then the policies can now begin to, take its natural course. So that said, I think for me is au revoir. Tomorrow, Dr. Shable will be around. He will be taking the rest of the lectures. I'll also be understudying it. So thank you for having me. And I hope I've been able to, pass a message or give us an insight to what we could be and what we can do better.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
so much.
Thank you very much, Doc.
Have a blessed day.
So, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Doc, very much, sir. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
God bless you for a wonderful lecture delivery.
Thank you very
Thank you very much, sir.
much.